Good morning, guys. Welcome to another episode of Day Trading with Nuke. One of the moderators over here at Boiler Room Trading. And today we have a little bit longer watch list than what we did yesterday. Everything that was on my watch list yesterday is on this list today. So we're going to start off on the lower price side of things. We're going to have our first look at NEO. Now, NEO's quite a bit thinly traded right now, and normally I wouldn't touch this with the thinliness that it has, but at the moment it's still been kind of hot. It's got a lot of eyes on it, so I'm watching it. So it's been kind of falling off the face of the planet last couple of days. You had a good drop down, and then it rallies, and then it drops again. So I am kind of short biased on this thing, and the reason for that is when I look at this, what I see is on the 4-hour chart, we're coming into a pretty good wedge. It's been doing a lot of consolidation. And that longer term wedge, it has more room to break to the downside than it does to the upside, because that 200 resistance is good and solid. So, I don't know. Anything's game to be changed as we get closer to the opening bell. It's going to matter what happens as we get into this triangle, and then it will break up or down. If it breaks down, expect to see it hold below this resistance line, and if it breaks up above support, expect to hold. If it holds above support, and then where it can go to, we'd be looking at for today is going to be on the high side, which is very unlikely in my opinion, somewhere around the $7.08. And more likely is if this thing gets driven down somewhere around $6. So it does have a good range of movement, which is why I want to like it, or why I like it. And because it's only at $6.75, it's easy to afford to be able to trade a good bit of it. Okay, next up, we're going to look at CRON. I'm going to try and roll through these guys so we're not like hung up. If you notice, CRON had a kind of a good spike there over a few weeks, and then it had a good size pullback, spiked up. But you can also look at this thing is really kind of like been on a downward trend here, and you can see that as the 200 curls over. So what I look at with CRON is this 200 was curling over, but now it's coming flat. Yesterday we broke well above the 200. So I might see a consolidation back around to that 200 level before it rallies and bounces up again and goes long for a long term. So what does that actually look like? Well, when we're looking at, price action, once it jumped above that long-term resistance trend line we had drawn, then it becomes support, and it stayed there. But if you notice, from our pre-market action, the support line that I had drew, which was support, it had broke beneath there, yes, but old support becomes new resistance. Old resistance becomes new support. It got up here, it never broke it, right? So effectively, it couldn't break that support, which is now resistance, and it started coming back down. So when we look at this resistance line here, that's based on the end of the day high prices from yesterday. So that's why we have two of these. And then this really steep one, this is from all of today's pre-market action. So initially out of the gate, this is more important to you. But in the event it starts breaking outside, I leave this one on here because that's going to be of importance. And then this, I'll just go ahead and change to green. And the reason being, it used to be resistance. Now I would see this as support. This line here here, you could draw your bottom triangle across, but really and truly, the bottom support on this thing is kind of negligible until you actually find it. So I am looking towards CRON as a short in the event that it does manage to rally and break over any of these resistance lines. it has a little potential on the upside to go possibly up to around $10, maybe $10.30. But more likely it's going to get hammered down to around the $9 mark, even possibly if they stick it to it down to around the $8 mark. You see it just took another dive there. So definitely more bias towards the short side, and short side actual support. If you looked at this could be all the way down around 8s. So if you don't see it break above this, plan on watching it nosedive. All right. Oh, and let's look at this here. That's that other reason. Here's where we started out, around this area here, but that's, yeah. And then this is where we're at now here. So that's why it's so steep. But our supports, you have the 200 here. So could it bounce here? Yeah, absolutely, off that 200. But if it chooses to go back down, right, your 20 EMA is all the way here at the top of 8, and your 50 is all the way down 856. Yeah, it's 50 cents away. So I would more likely see this thing hold support around here. That's why I've got it this way. So I highly doubt we're going to see it up here. That's my 2 cents. We'll have to see. Usually these lines, when they start converging, you'll like to see them. They'll come and get a lot closer to each other. You see, look at that. Bam, it's dropping down some more. That's why I'm generally inclined to see this thing consolidate to the downside. All right. What is my next one? My next one is AMD. All right. AMD's kind of been this wild ride. It rallied up, and then it had a steep drop-off. We're still on a descending curve. You know, it's just these wild swings, you know. It's like all the way up, all the way back down. But when we look at over a little bit longer period of time, that's why, you know, AMD's still on my list. You know, it's got a lot of movement, but it's also heavily algorithm traded. So it's kind of one of those ones you hit it hard and fast in the morning if you're going to play it at all. But currently, because we have the 20 over the 50, we're showing a short-term trend up, but this longer-term trend is still coming down. So I see this thing having a little more sandwiching action to go. And what I'm looking for is, where is this thing going? If we bounce off of this support line and we set in a new higher high, right, this thing's probably going to be rallying up. If we stay inside this triangle and we set in a lower high and a higher low, eventually it's going to break out. But the main thing is I want to see if it breaks out and holds above this. If not, then I'm looking for this longer term support line to hold some importance to us. So if we shrink the price action down a little bit to where it's not quite so blinding, this thing's got a lot more room to work to the downside and stay underneath this support line here. So either way it goes, looking at a cap out on the top around 22.46 and a bottom of it around 21.05. All depends on how much the market sentiment is looking at it. Now those were from yesterday. So what has more market sentiment today is going to be Square, ROKU, Canopy Growth, and Qualcomm. So Square, you can see, has definitely been kind of dropping off the map. But if it can manage to put in and hold this a little bit, you know, maybe we need a little more, wrong one. Maybe it needs a little more room for support. You know, maybe it needs some support drawn like, I don't know, like this. Either way, it's descending down, man. This should have been actually a red line. Sorry, I got the sniffles, guys. It happens every morning. And the closer we get into winter, the more this is going to happen. So this one would have now been support too. So we'll change that over to a green. So that's what we're looking like. If it can't break this resistance line, yes, these could provide some support. Otherwise, if you see how much it's downtrended, I don't see this on the upside as being a possibility. I see more as the high of pre-market action being a cap level, and then more action down to the low side. But I don't know. This is one of those days with the range being what it is. I'm thinking 70, 75-ish on the low side, 80 on the high side, but could be wrong. It happens on occasion. You can see we had a steep decline on the long-term trend, but now it's flattening out. But even though it's flattening out, if you look at where my blue line cursor is here, it's still basically downtrending in a longer term. In the short term, it's rallied really well and consolidated. So we're coming into a good squeeze pattern here between this 200 and the 20. And that 50's come up nicely. But that 50 right here is holding closer to this support line, whereas the 20 is holding closer to this support line. So that's why I'm kind of looking, yeah, it might bounce, and that 20 or 200 EMA is going to fall somewhere right around here. So maybe we need to throw that in there too. Let's just put that in there, transfer it across. There we go. So there's a matter of importance. And then we'll mark our top line, mark our bottom line. So we'll see. Well, this thing could go flying, but we've got these marked here. So we'll see. But it's going to be a matter of where it holds resistance above this point or below this point, and it'll keep falling down. It might see some rejection off of one of these, catch some traction. If so, let it get up on top of this resistance and then start coming up. All right. God, I hate mornings. It's not my thing. All right. So ROKU. ROKU was on a long-term uptrend, and then that changed and it's dropped off really bad in the last couple of months. So what's bad about it dropping off real bad in the last couple of months is that's a hellaciously sharp retracement or consolidation in price. So, and the big electronic companies have kind of had that. But with the earnings call and this thing dropped a good bit overnight. So from 59 down to 53. And then it's been in a steady state dropping ever since still. So I'm more inclined to see this one have, if it doesn't just have a sharp drop out of the gate, then maybe see a little bit of a rally. And the reason for that is we are way off of support on the 4-hour because of how much we had dropped off. So even though it looks grossly negative, which it is, I still see a little bit of rally because we're so far off of support. So am I short biased on this? Absolutely. But I would be very careful because we're getting so far off of our support that even though I'm short biased, it needs to have a little bit of a correction and come back up. So play it as long as it's safe to go short. But if it starts to rally a little bit and get above this resistance line, which should be red, there we go. If it is able to rally and break above that, expect to see it could try and fill back in a little bit of this gap. All we're basically saying, you've got a lot of room to consider that it's going off the rails here. All right, next one up is CGC. CGC, Canopy Growth Company, and they just passed another state legalized weed. Weed stocks have been popular lately. You've seen this thing skyrocketed for a couple of months, and then it consolidated. It rallied itself, and it got back up over the 200. So what are we looking at? The 200 was in a longer trend drop. Now we're actually rallying, and the 200 is coming up a bit. Our 20 EMA is above the 50. So, yeah, all this is good, but we rallied yesterday well above the 200. And you see how it's having that steep drop down. So that 200 EMA is going to be down somewhere around right here. So my projected low is going to be somewhere around here for it to bounce, even though the Fibonacci says right now low should be somewhere down around here. So you got about $3 to play there. And then on the upper side, why are you not? Ooh, so that's way up. I don't know. I would be inclined to say this thing is more coming back down, and we're gonna watch this thing rally and consolidate and get back up in here somewhere between the moving averages on the longer term chart. Just my opinion. So watch for it to hold these. Currently, these are resistance lines. So channel down here, set up your descending triangles. However, if it breaks above it, look for this support to now become your resistance. And then the fact it could ever jump above this support line, then watch for the northerly growth. But I think it's time for a little consolidation. We're going to see it underneath these lines today. Just my 2 cents, guys. Got another message came in. Sorry, 1 second. All right, next one up is, let's see, CGC QCOM. All right, QCOM. It had shown some growth over the last few months, and then a sharp pullback and correction, right? So we are still well below the 200 right now. You can see where yesterday we rallied up to the 200 and just flat out rejected that, slammed it back down. And today, God, this thing is just falling off the map, right? So what does that mean? Well, if we shrink the price action a little bit to where it's somewhat more reasonable, see how it's not, all this is not even showing on the, I'd have to shrink this down just to, we're still way down here. And I think that's just too much compared to what this thing normally moves, right? So I don't see it getting all the way down to the low 50s, right? So what's happening? I think if we manage to stay underneath this as a resistance line, yeah, it's going to continue falling like a rock. But I don't think it's going to go so far, that this thing's going to lose another 10 points in the near future. I think at some point it's going to catch its footing just because look how far off of support we are. So let's say it does drop. I'm shooting for a bottom of around 50 before it catches itself and then jumps over this resistance line, which will then become support and work its way on back up to the 60s. Do I think it has a snowball's chance in hell of getting back up around 66? Not really. It would have to have one hell of a rally. But we'll see. Anything's possible, right? So not my place to, say this is what it will and won't do. But that's my 2 cents for the day, guys. We're already almost 20 minutes in this. Sorry, it's kind of long. I'm going to get this out to you. Remember, if you hadn't joined us, come on over and join BRT, Boiler Room Trading. Get in here with Connor Polifroni and myself, Brandon Walsh, Johnny Matrix, Miami Eric, and Vinci. We got a great team. We analyze these stocks every day. All day long, you'll get live trading advice on like how we see the market. We're never going to tell you what you should do, but we will tell you how we see it. And we're not into making the alerts, but we will tell you what is currently going on and what we see, how we see it, why we see it. And that's kind of how we roll. So this Friday, which will be tomorrow, I'm going to be doing 2 sessions for the guys that have helped get me to over 200 subscribers. And that is going to be at noon Eastern Standard Time and 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then again on Saturday, we'll be doing 2 free mentor sessions at noon and 5 Eastern Standard Time as well. So thank you guys much, and I'm going to get this out to y'all. See ya.